Okay, so we're here to do a step-by-step for a displacement schedule using the multi-fluids panel. Effectively, what we've got here is the horizontal bobcat well, and we're going to simulate that we've drilled ahead out of the shoe at 7,200 feet, 7,234 that you can see here, drilled down to 10,318 feet, and we now want to trip out of the hole, and we're going to circulate a mud to allow us to trip out with no back pressure. So to leave the wellbore in a static state with a static column of fluid. So what we've got here, 9.5-inch open hole. The mud weight we're drilling with is 11.18 ppg. You can see the static density here is statically underbalanced to the pore pressure here. We're drilling ahead at 530 gallons a minute, and we're holding the anchor point pressure at the shoe to be 12 pounds per gallon. What that means is for drilling ahead, we are holding back 140 psi, and then on connections, we're holding 340. So effectively, you've got 200 psi of friction that's being held back from the anchor point back up to surface. And you can see here that near the bottom hole, near TD, we've actually gotten pretty close to the frac gradient here, but for argument's sake, this is more of a loss gradient, so we're not too worried about that. What we want to do is, as I say, design a mud weight that is going to help us to trip out of the hole here, displace it to a complete mud, static column of mud, and then trip out of the hole. So the way that you would do this, leave everything as you see here. The first step is to decide how heavy a mud do you need, because remember, this is going to be at temperature and pressure. Your mud weight at surface isn't going to be exactly what you think. As in this example, you'll see that at surface at 77 Fahrenheit, we've got 11.18 ppg mud, but look at the static density down here, it's as low as 10.87 due to the expansivity and the compressibility of the fluid. So it's actually more expansive, it's lighter due to the temperature than it is being compressed or heavier. So one might think that you just choose a 12 ppg mud that would balance off here. It's going to be somewhat lighter, so that's why we've got to go through these steps. So let's do that right now. So the first step that you would do is go across here to the multi-fluids panel, and what that will open up is the multi-fluid, where you've effectively got the graphic here on the left, which is showing the annulus, and then it's also showing the drill pipe right next to it. And again, for those of you that are not familiar with it, the reason that we do this is so that you can visualize the two different fluids next to each other. So how we want to do this is that we want to first design or figure out what is the resultant mud weight that we want to leave the wellbore in. And then we're going to work backwards from there to see how we can circulate that in. So the way to do this is, as you can see, the default state is that the initial condition is that there is your drilling fluid inside the drill string, that's the green color, as well as in the annulus all the way up to surface. So that's the initial condition of both of these. The condition that we want to analyze and to see what the pressures would be is by moving the bit out of the hole. We have to do a number of things here. So let's first analyze the wellbore with no drill pipe in the hole. So what we've got to do is move the bit position to 0. We get this warning that there is going to be an error, that they're mismatched, moving the bit there. So we match both together, and what you'll see on the left-hand side is now the indicator for the drill string is gone, and there is no drill pipe in the wellbore either. Furthermore, to make it static, we want to put the pump rates to 0 also. And then finally, we want to move over to the choke here and move this to 0 gauge or 14 psi. So if we move this to 0, now what you should see is the orange and green curves collapse onto one another, so you can't really tell a difference. And lo and behold, if there was nothing being pumped, the bit is out of the hole, your 11.18 mud is actually going to behave as a 10.96 ppg mud. So again, we are underbalanced to these. So now we can play around by increasing the mud weights to determine where we can go. Now, what I've done before getting to here, and you can do it at any time, is that you see the drilling window, what it is, and it's looking like any sort of anything from, what is this value here? It's going to be, no, we want to go right there. That value is 11.65, okay, for pore pressure that you can see there. And that's going to be that guy there. And so we know that the resultant mud weight's got to be greater than that, but then lower than what we're seeing here, which is going to be, we've got something which is like 13.9. No, that's too big. What we want to see is this one here, which is going to be 12.47. Okay, so we don't want to be heavier than 12.47. So we've got 11.65 to 12.5 effectively is where we want to go, or thereabouts. So with that, you would go across to your muds, and then, okay, I might as well save that. I'm going to go across to the muds, and we need to tell LeidarPlan what muds we want to analyze. So you want to build a bunch of muds that would be the balance muds that you want to roll over to. So what I've already done here is I've copied my drilling mud and I've just weighted it up. So what I've actually called them is the balance mud. So I made one mud which is 12 pound per gallon, and then I made one which is 12.5, and then one which is 12.2, just to try to see what the variance would be for all of those. So having access to these in the section plan then allows me to work with it in the scenarios that we're going to be simulating here. So if we go back to, let's jump right ahead to the multi-fluid panel so that we can start by looking at these fluids. So here we are back. Now, so what we want to do is build what this condition would be, and bear with me, I know this is saying initial conditions. This would be if you wanted to, we term it initial, but this is just to analyze what the end goal would be. It would be an initial condition if you wanted to circulate it out, so you wanted to displace from a heavy to light. But this is how you can use it to design your mud. So if you come down here to downhole fluids, now here is where you would then pick, okay, if I picked a 12 ppg mud, that would be in the entire open hole. Where does that land me? So you'll see, simply by choosing that initial condition, now you will see what this curve looks like. And although this looks pretty good, we're really close right here to this. That pore pressure stringer is 11.75 ppg, and the static column is 11.77. So I wouldn't feel too comfortable doing something like that, leaving this in the wellbore. Remember, this is a static column, right? No choke pressure and no flow rate. So that's where we're just trying to see what this would look like. So 12 is going to be too light. Let's have a look at 12.5 ppg. If you put it up half a pound per gallon, what that would look like. This is just an iterative process. You'll see here 12.5 could work. This is now erring on the side of the frac gradient side, or the loss gradient side. So this would work. In the back of my mind, we are so close to this that if we, remember this is static, if we were circulating to get this heavier weight mud in, we might encroach on this loss gradient. So to that end, I would maybe do one more check of 12.2 and see where that lands up. It's a little bit better. It's a little bit further away. So for argument's sake, let's just go through an example and see if this is what it is. So I've now figured out that if I leave 12.2 pound per gallon mud in the hole with no back pressure and nothing in there, I should have a very safe and static wellbore. I could effectively leave this and we would not be in worry of a kick. So now let's go into how would we displace going from 11.18 to 12 pound per gallon. The next step would be to check what the friction pressures would look like during the displacement. The final step is then going to be going to the displacement schedule tab to then get the details of this displacement. So what we would do here is, first off, is reset to our drilling condition, which is going to be this regard 9.5 inch, this 11.18. This is what we're going to be, this is the initial condition. So now if we go to the schedule over here, what we want to do is put in this, what are we going to displace to, okay? And we already know that we're going to pick 12.2 ppg mud. Now also what we have to do is put our bit back down to bottom, so that then we will start the circulation or the displacement with the bit on bottom. So to do that, we would come back here to the fluid layers tab, put the bit position back at 10,318 feet. We're going to get this mismatch error again, which is just saying that for the displacement and where the bit position is are not aligned. So here you go. Now you've got the drill string here, and then the diagram of the bit is down here at the bottom on the left. And this is where we're at. So let's go to the back to the schedule tab. If the displacement fluid is going to be 12.5 ppg. Oh, sorry, we said it was 12.2. I think I've got this is a good exercise because this 12.2 is actually not the right one. So let's pause that, and I'm going to go across here. Let's save this, that's fine. And then I'm going to go to the fluids, and my 12.2 that I thought I designed properly is not right, and that's why I didn't look properly on the last one. We're going to click this, and I'm just going to lighten this to 12.2. Hit save. Now we've got the 12.2 is actually listed as 12.2, the same as in the title of the name of the actual mud. So now let's get back here and start what it is that we want to do. Okay, so now when we come to our schedule is where we are there. I've jumped my own gun here a little bit because obviously to do the displacement properly, we should be in anchor point mode. That is what we want to maintain during the displacement. So let's go back to the simulation screen, and from drilling, let's go back to where we were. I should have made a note of what this was. Is the anchor point was the shoe, and we were trying to maintain close to 12 pound per gallon at the shoe. That is what we were when we were drilling to TD. That's where we ended off with this curve. So this was at the end. Keep in mind that this is the pressure, or somewhere in the open hole, that we want to maintain this 12. Okay, so this is that 140 psi with pumps on, and then 340 with pumps off. So this is where what we've got here. Perfect. So we keep this. Now, finally, let's get back to the multi-fluids tab. We come across here. Now we're on the schedule that we're going to roll over from 11.18 to 12.2 ppg in the open hole, maintaining this 12 ppg anchor point pressure. We don't have to do anything else here. The next step is to go across to the circulation tab. Remember, the circulation tab is now going to allow us to visualize and help us to determine, is the mud weight we chose the correct one, and how much do we need, how much pump rate do we need in order to circulate this around, okay? So with regards to here, we don't have to do anything on the circulation tab other than interact with the slider on the bottom. This is going to help us. As soon as I start to move this, you're going to see the 12.2 ppg mud being pumped down the drill string. You're not going to see anything different in the annulus until, of course, the fluid turns the bit. So even if you move this as far as possible into the drill pipe, then you're going to see that this 140 psi is still 140. Nothing has changed. Your pressures are different, obviously, in the drill string because you have heavier weight fluid that you're pumping against. So once we start to pump this around, however, now when you get some fluid into the annulus and you hit let go, we're going to recalculate what this looks like, and then you should be seeing that we're circulating in. Everything seems to still be okay. We're encroaching on that frac gradient there, which isn't the greatest, let's just have a deeper look and figure out what this is going to look like if I fill up even more so, trying to hold that 12.2 ppg. Now what you can see is a couple of things have happened. That 3/4 of the way through the circulation, we've lost surface pressure at this flow rate. So we're wide open, and our bottom hole pressure has now eclipsed what this pressure is here. So our bottom hole pressure at 12.59, the actual frac gradient or loss gradient is 12.53, so that's not the greatest. So this is basically showing twofold that we can't maintain what we want to do here. So what I would do in this case is start to decrease this circulation rate to see if that reduction in friction pressure will give us, move us away from the loss gradient and then also give us positive pressure. And lo and behold, it does. One thing not to get confused about is this operational window that you see and the shaded region that's here. This is because we're electing to show the operational range. That operational range ties in the nominal flow rate, or 530 gallons a minute. So if we take off the operational range, this is now only going to show you the difference between pumps off and the current flow rate, which is what we want to see. So as you can see here, what's quite nice is if we would have decreased our pump rate to 330 gallons a minute, we have barely enough choke pressure here, so we know we're going to have to go lower, and also the fact that we're away from the frac gradient, which is positive. So we can move this a little bit more to the right. I know what's going to happen. We're going to get a red indicator here. I just moved it a little bit further. So this is also showing that we are a little bit too heavy on the friction, so we're going to have to drop that a little bit further. But we don't need to worry about this actual number here because the displacement schedule with the auto pump ramping is going to take that into account for us. So what I would do in this instance is just to have a look at how this goes is to go to the very end of circulation, okay? See at this flow rate how much we are over, and here you can see we are, and then say, okay, so if 230 is going to be too much here, let's drop it all the way to slow circulation rates and see if we can satisfy the drilling window as well as the back pressure, and we barely can do that. Okay, you will see here that we're still at 0, so that means the chokes would be wide open, and we are just shy of the frac gradient or the loss gradient that you see here. Okay, so for argument's sake, I am going to say, I guess you could go even lower. I don't know if you'd circulate any bit lower, but this is going to show you that the reduction in the friction pressure here will give you a little bit of movement, not much, so can keep it at 130. This is just something for you to play with, that to determine what is it that you're looking for. So what we actually see here, and what I want to draw your attention to, is that with this mud weight, that trying to achieve this 12 ppg at the shoe is not entirely feasible. You see here this value is 3645, where that's the desired anchor point pressure. The actual anchor point pressure is almost 100 psi heavier. Okay, so that's what this value is here, is going to be 12.86. That's the pressure, 12.286 rather. That's the pressure that you're seeing there, and that is indeed what this value is here, that equivalent, that dynamic. So the lowest you can go is that value, 12.286 at the shoe, if you're going to be circulating, okay? So that is where, if I was to increase this to 12.3, this is now going to show you that that is where that new pressure will be, and we have positive pressure finally because of that. So for argument's sake, let's choose this to be the case that we want to get to. Okay, So now we know that as we've done this, if you drag this back, now you can also see partway through what pressure you would be at and how far away you are going to be from there. All right, so this is what we're going to want to do, and this is what we're going to want to roll over. Now the next step is going to be to go to our displacement schedule. What we can do with that is, of course, change this back to, let's imagine that we are actually at the initial state that we are going to be circulating around, and we're going to be starting at 11.18 and then going across to the new mud weight. So what we're going to do here is go across to the displacement schedule tab, because now this is the information that you want to give to people. And what you're going to notice is that the displacement schedule tab inherits the fluids in the multi-fluid schedule. So it already knows your bit depth, and it knows your flow rate, and it knows what fluid you want to roll over to. Remember, we're at 11.18, and now we're going to roll over to 12.2 pound per gallon balance mud. So here you're going to see that I do want to have automatic pump staging, because I'd like LeidarPlan. We're going to start circulating at 530 gallons a minute, but then we want to then start to decrease the flow rates down to the minimum in order to maintain that anchor point pressure. So the next step is going to be to hit next, and then we're going to do the calculation, and then we're going to open up the results, so that then you can see what the schedule would be that you want to give to the rig crew when they're going to do this displacement or whatever that looks like. So I haven't done this before, so this is just going live. I'm going to let it do its computing here to get us to 100% to get the analysis done. These are generating the files, all the reporting and everything like that. Let's hit next. Now I want to download that zip file, which we've got. And what we will do then is I'm going to have a look at those here, and what you will, oops, that's not going to let me, oh, there we go. This is what I want to show you. This is the displacement folder that will be brought down. What you want to have a look at, let's go directly into the displacement schedule, the CSV file. This is what this is going to look like. And then what you're going to be able to do, let's go all the way along to the events tab so you can see the basics. That at step 0, this is showing in total volume that we're pumping with the new fluid, okay? The short message 12.2. It reaches the bit at 181 barrels. The fluid reaches the anchor point at 325 barrels, reaches the shoe, which is the same, and then finally up to the choke at 654. And then the total pump volumes are shown afterwards there, okay? Oh, sorry, this event at 654 barrels is the amount of pumping where the choke has reached its limit, and then we switch to flow mode, which is decreasing the flow rate. So this summary doesn't show you what the rates were. We need to go back and look at the overall displacement schedule, which is this tab, to then have a look at what all of that looks like. So here you've got column D is your strokes, time, if you remember all of these, and what we're looking at is your service back pressure. This is what you're going to want to be reporting to the crew after how much time, when you start to need to relax things. So let's go have a look over here. You can notice that at row 31, this is when the 12.2 ppg reaches the bit. So it's after this point where your pressures are going to start to change. So once this turns the corner, and then you'll see here it hasn't changed yet. This is the service back pressure is 230 in this case for that 12.3 ppg anchor point. Now you'll start to see, if you start to scroll down, where the mud now your anchor point, or rather your surface back pressure will start to change following the schedule here because remember, this well is horizontal. So despite the fact that the mud has moved, not much changes in hydrostatics has occurred until that fluid gets up into the vertical, and then this is where you've got to start relaxing the surface pressure to maintain that anchor point pressure. So you can see here that the mud has reached the anchor point position. Now you can see these changes, and this is the column that you would be grabbing and then making your displacement schedule from. You would be targeting these key events, or after however long, after 36 minutes of pumping, you want to be holding 150 psi, or after 450 barrels pumped. Okay, so this is where, following this column here, and now you can see that also that once we get to this value here at 51 minutes and 647 barrels is where we've maxed out at 530 gallons a minute. The surface back pressure is 5 psi, and then we would have to decrease. In this instance, it doesn't decrease it quickly enough, the automatic displacement, so you might go back into the displacement schedule and manually do it like I did. I know that if you remember from the first one, that we would want to switch to 130 gallons a minute slow circulation rate to get positive pressure. In this case, the automatic mode doesn't react fast enough to get you down there. So I would go back and then do another displacement schedule, doing it manually. Maybe we can even do it in this one. You can see here after 655 barrels is when things start to change. So how this would manifest back here on the displacement schedule, let's go back to the displacement schedule. What I want to do is, instead of that, I'm going to effectively, where would I change that? I would have to make another line here to allow me to enter that. You could conversely do everything at 130 gallons a minute and then see what the difference is. So let's just do that. Let's displace this at a slow circulation rate, and let's have a look at what the result is, and then you can judge for yourself if you would have to go back and start from scratch, if you would want to put in multiple fluids or not. But there's more than one way to skin a cat, and this is one way to get that done. Perfect. Okay. Now we're going to come here. We're going to download this again, and then we're going to do the same. So here you go. Let's have a look at this. This is the new one. So now we should see something a little bit different. Let's have a look here. Now you can see we've got 130 gallons a minute. Okay, our surface back pressures will be somewhat different. So we start off with that. This first one is 229. That's because the legacy one of 530 gallons a minute. But the first step, after 2 seconds, you'll see 130 gallons a minute. So we have to be holding 307 psi. And then once you scroll down, you will see how things change once that mud gets into the vertical, and you have to start to relax this. You go all the way down, and you're going to see, lo and behold, if you would maintain things at 130 gallons a minute, you've got positive choke pressure the entire time, and then you're also holding, in this instance, your desired anchor point of 12.3 ppg. So you will have thus rolled over to 12.2. Your end back pressure is only 7 psi, or atmosphere. You'd be wide open. Now you would be able to start to trip out of the hole. You could turn your pumps off because you're overbalanced. You can now start to strip out of the hole with your swab analysis, holding back pressure with 12.2 ppg. And you would then be able to figure out how to safely get out of there. But this will leave you with the balanced mud, as I was showing you before, in this initial condition back here of 12.2 ppg with no mud in the hole, and what that resultant pressure would be. Okay, so we can do that again by revisiting, doing this, moving my bit to 0, doing this, and then dropping this to 0. This is where you would then end up with your fluid column shown here. Okay. Sorry, and if I move choke, this has got to be to 0 as well. This will now give you, this is rolling over to 12.2 ppg with no pump in, no mud in the hole, and you would have a perfectly balanced wellbore. Okay, and that is displacement schedule in a nutshell.